Welcome to Moving Intentionally, the podcast for women who are driven, capable, and a little exhausted. I'm your host, Jess Ellis, a strength and fitness coach and a professional yapper. And if you're ready to train smarter, live intentionally, and perform at your best without burning out, then you're in exactly the right place. Let's get to it. Right, the first 3 episodes of the Moving Intentionally podcast have been all about the why. I told you a little bit about my story. I told you about working smarter, not necessarily always harder. And I also talked about the voice in your head, that inner critic versus ambition. But today I actually really want to give you something that you can go away and action. I think this is sometimes the challenge in the fitness industry, is because everybody is so unique, hence why, my business is called Self, and individualism is such a big factor. But I also think that is the challenge of people taking action, because there's so much information. People often think, well, does this apply to me? Does that sound about right? Or when they try something and it doesn't work, they lose faith because they've not found the right thing for them yet. So I want to talk to you, and I want to talk to you about your training, and I want to talk to you about the stuff that women get wrong all the time. And it's not through any fault of their own. I think it's just through this mixed messaging that we often see, but also struggling to apply it to our own lives. So today I want to talk to you about what you can do instead when it comes to thinking a little bit around underfueling, lifting an appropriate weight in the gym and challenging yourself. I want to talk about measuring progress and talk a little bit about scales as well. And I also want to talk about the acknowledgement of change that you see in yourself, because I think these topics are 4 things that I think get massively overlooked, and that's what I want to go into today with you. So I'm going to answer like this is someone sat opposite me asking me hard questions. I'm for all his faults, I'm pretending like Stephen Bartlett sat opposite me asking me these questions, right? Because I think that's what's going to enable you to get the best information out of me as a fitness coach who's nearly been doing this for almost a decade, so that you can go ahead and actually make use of this in your life, right? So let's start with a big one. This is huge, by the way. Let's start with underfueling. And this one probably breaks my heart the most. And it probably breaks my heart the most because I have been in that position where I wasn't eating enough, fueling enough for my goals. And because so many people are doing it, you often don't even realize you're doing it. You're training really hard, but you're eating not as hard in relation to the goals that you've got. And I can 100% relate to that position. So I think it's important to talk about, first and foremost, the negatives of underfueling. You might think, well, yeah, obviously it's just going to make training harder. You're going to feel a bit flat. Yeah, they are obvious things. It is going to be more difficult if you aren't putting as much fuel in your body as your body needs to create an output. But there's the impact on performance, sure, but there's also the impact on your recovery. So you need to remember that when we exercise, whether it's running, swimming, going to the gym, lifting weights, that the exercise is the stimulus. The exercise is the thing that we are asking for our body to adapt to. But that is not where the adaptation happens. You don't go to the gym and lift some weights and leave and be like, oh my God, look at how much my muscle has grown in that session. You might have a little bit of a pump. You might have a little bit of a blood rush to that area, and your biceps might be pumping a little bit more. But it's short-lived. That disappears. You don't magically gain that strength and that muscle growth in that session. Where you do grow it is in the adaptation that occurs outside of that session. When you go home and you refuel and you rehydrate and you recover and you get some good quality sleep, that's where your body goes, oh, she's given me all the tools to be able to make this happen. Imagine a little bit like cooking, right? Doing a recipe. You don't just throw all the stuff into a pan and be like, well, that should do the trick. It doesn't really work like that. You need to nurture it. You need to stir it. You need to keep an eye on the time. You need to make sure it's the right temperature. You need to do all those things so that you can get the perfect recipe. And the same goes with your health and fitness. So whatever goals you're trying to achieve, you need to think of it as like a whole package rather than just one singular thing, like just rocking up to the gym and thinking that that's going to be the be all and end all. As we know, lifestyle and all the other stuff that goes outside of what happens to us has a bigger impact than often just the hour that we spend in the gym. If you're somebody who's really stressed up to your eyeballs, for example, and you're asking your body to get, stronger, faster, fitter, all these things, then it's going to be much harder when you are stressed, because your body's almost trying to put out too many fires at once. It almost wants you to pick one, and it will always deem what it views as most important. So the negatives of underfueling, poor performance, poor recovery. Because if you're not giving yourself enough fuel, imagine you go to the gym and you're barely eating any calories. You go home and you're thinking, I'm going to get loads stronger, I'm going to develop some muscle, or even this elusive tone word that women talk about quite a lot, which basically what you're saying is you want to have more muscle, but you want to have less body fat. That's what you're suggesting. But you are never going to have more muscle if you are not fueling yourself correctly. And this is why it's a fine balance when it comes to body recomposition as a goal, for example, because you can't just eat less and do loads more. It doesn't really work like that. It might do short term, but it doesn't necessarily last very long without you feeling like trash. So there's that goes into it. There's the recovery element. There's also the poor quality sleep. So if you're going to bed hungry, can you imagine how well rested you're going to be when you wake up in the morning? Probably not. Your body, again, is trying to put out fires. It is not going to be focused on having deep, restful REM sleep. It is instead going to be thinking, I just need to, keep this system running. I just need to, hopefully she'll be all right and she'll feed us in the morning. And also, as women, I think the important thing to acknowledge here as well is the impact that has on hormones. Now, every single person's different, so we also can't just throw out a blanket statement here. But the long-term effects of chronically underfueling, and when I say chronically underfueling, I mean like for long periods of time, is you do not know the damage that is doing to your metabolism, to your bone density, to your muscle mass over time, to your gut health, to your hormone health. There's loads of factors there that we can't say we have always got an eye on. Like I always think back to when I was severely underfueling and over-exercising, and I was on the pill at the time, so I did not have a proper view on what my cycle looked like. I didn't know if I was having regular bleeds. I didn't really know what I was comparing it to, because I was only in my early 20s and I'd only ever really known it to be that way. Whereas if I compare how I feel now in my cycle and what I'm aware of and what I know, it's a totally different ballgame. And that's how I can compare now and think, oh my God, I was massively underfueling. The way that I felt very inflamed. My gut always felt like it was not in a good place. My digestion was all over the shop. My sleep was very poor. Like I was always tired, but would I say I ever felt really truly rested? No, probably not. So this is one of the things I want you to think about, is it has a lot of negative repercussions. We also need to think about how underfueling relates to our goals. How what we say we want to achieve and what we're doing are actually matching up. So when I go back to that goal of wanting to be toned, wanting to have some definition in your body, wanting to perform really well in a chosen sport, or actually just feel really fit and be able to run and whatever it might be, can you have a think about how actually that plays a part in underfueling? Like, if you aren't supporting your goals, how can you expect your body to produce the outcomes that you want? You can't go to do a half marathon without having plenty of carbs in your diet to fuel you through that session. You can't expect to be building muscle and not fueling yourself with a well-balanced diet, but making sure that includes protein, carbs, fats, etc. So it's making sure that when we say what we're saying we want and what we're actually doing, are we holding up a mirror to those things, and are they actually aligning? And I think there's a lot to blame here, which is, I think social media, for example, is a massive problem. But before social media, there was the massive diet culture of the early noughties. I'm sure I go further back, when diets first came about in our awareness in the 80s. I know my mum and people had loads of stuff targeted at them when they were probably the age that I am now. So it's those types of things where we have to think, actually, where have I got this messaging from that I need to eat so little in order to make good progress? Because I can tell you for a fact, I probably eat more now than I have ever eaten, but I also perform better than I have ever eaten. And in regards to like my body image and my relationship with food and my relationship with self, I feel so much better. But that has been a work in progress, and that's something that I work with all my clients on, which is like, where are you now? What do we need to work on? And also, what are some beliefs that you've taken from the past that we maybe need to break down that aren't serving you anymore? Because I think that's what it comes down to, is we all pick up these things over the years, and we often don't even know where they come from, you know? Like, I worked with a lady earlier this year, and she was in her 60s, and she had only just got into strength training, and she said to me, I try not to have too many carbs. And I said, oh, okay, interesting. Why? Where's that come from? She was like, well, you're just not supposed to, are you? And literally, she could not tell me where she had got that information from, where she had been told that she shouldn't be eating carbohydrates. And this is what I mean. We pick up these beliefs and we pick up these tidbits of information, but we don't necessarily even know where they're from or what if they're serving us anymore. And if you think about, you're somebody who maybe previously you felt like that's what you should do, and then you start doing something, you start exercising, you start looking after your health, you are technically doing more. So therefore, what your diet and your nutrition should reflect that also. It should change to support you. There's an argument to say it should change before we're even obviously prioritizing activity and stuff, but it especially should when we have goals in mind. So I think a good question to ask is like, where do these beliefs that I've got about food come from? Because when you can unpick them, oh, it's from my mum, she used to do that, or actually it's because I saw that thing in that magazine once that said this thing, you can then start to debunk it a little bit more and actually follow up. But I think one of the things worth acknowledging as well is, in today's world, you will always find examples for and against something. If I wanted to find out why eating a lemon, I'm trying to think of something random, eating a lemon in water is really good for me in the morning, I will find loads of evidence to back it. If I want to find out why it's bad for me, I will find loads of evidence to back it. So there's almost like this, I want to instill that we need to all have an element of critical thinking. We don't just need to be told what to do by people. We need to be able to actually use our own brain and be like, actually, I don't know if that sounds right anymore, and maybe I'm going to look into that. And yeah, I am going to trust that person because I am doing a bit of research myself, but maybe I should gather some evidence as to why it might not be the best thing as well. And this is what I mean about how things being really confusing, but you are the only person when it comes to your health and well-being that can make that final choice. So what can we do about it? Well, the first thing when it comes to underfueling is we want to be able to assess, don't guess. So when I talk about that, that's a really overused saying in the fitness industry when it comes to tracking. And I don't mean you have to track if you don't want to. Can tracking be a useful tool? Yes. Do you have to use it? No, I don't believe so. I think it depends on the person. I've worked with people before who have had a relationship with tracking food where it doesn't suit them. Maybe it feels a bit obsessive. Maybe it feels like it's an extra job on the list that makes them feel bad about themselves. On the other hand, I've had people who have had no awareness of like macronutrients, calories and stuff like that. And when they've tracked, their eyes have been open to something that in a bit of information they've never known before. But is that something you want to use forever? No, not really. I can't imagine myself at age 90 using MyFitnessPal, but you might want to touch base on it every now and again as a reference point for, am I eating enough? But the best measure will often be, how do you feel? So I even think about this when I did my ultramarathon at the start of this year. I was unsure if I was eating enough carbohydrates. Could I have manually added the carbohydrate content for everything I was eating the day? Yeah. But is there a tool for using it? Yes, also. Did I use it for very long? No, I think I did it for about 5 days. And then kind of did my own reference point of what I needed to increase over the coming weeks and months and stuff, and was quite happy moving forward with that. So you can use it and you can use it as a tool, but it doesn't have to be something that you use forever. That's the point. So assess, don't guess. I mean, you can monitor it. You could do a food diary. You could go pen and paper, old school. With some of my clients, I'll just get them to write it down. But what I think is also important is to acknowledge what it actually means. So yes, monitor as step one, but also step two, understand what it actually means. So are you aware of what we're looking for? Is it because you're trying to understand if you're eating enough protein to support your muscle building goals? Is it because you're trying to think, are you eating enough calories? Or are you overeating on something? There's these types of things which can be really useful. And then the last thing is like implementation. And this is where I think a lot of people get really overwhelmed with nutrition and feel like they need to change everything all at once. And what I always say to people is it's not about trying to reinvent the wheel, but instead adding small, achievable goals with your nutrition that you can almost tick off. It's something that you can suggest as a habit for yourself or something as a routine that you want to nail over the next 3 to 4 weeks. Okay, cool. That's what I'm going to go after. I'm a bit of a nightmare for skipping breakfast, Jess, because I always try and get my kids sorted first, and then sometimes I get dropped down the list. Okay, cool. Over the next 3 or 4 weeks, should we try and improve that as a goal? What if we say that we want to try and get more consistent with that? And I say more consistent because I'm not saying I want them to be 100%, because reality is if they're going from not doing it at all to trying to do it, it's going to feel quite hard. So instead, if we almost build up these routines with nutrition, it's going to be much more achievable over time. But the challenge is everybody wants to change everything all at once, and they might be able to do it. Maybe if you are somebody who's quite like proactive, or you feel like you need to make a huge change for everything, but often that can be quite short-lived. So you want to make sure that you're meeting people at where they're at all the time with what they can achieve. And that's what I always try to do, especially when it comes to nutrition. So the underfueling one is a big one, right? That's what I wanted to mention as like my first one. The next thing is a hill that I will absolutely die on. And I'm going to give this one the time that it deserves. So if you take any of the points from today, I want you to take this one. That is lifting heavy. Okay, so in order for you to grow in the gym, in your strength training, to get stronger, you need to be challenged. And this is such a difficult one, and it's very subjective, because what one person thinks is challenging is totally different to what somebody else thinks is challenging. So we can't have like a set reference point of, well, that looks easy for them, that's what I'm going to do. It's all different. And a lot of that comes into it is like your training age and experience of how long you've maybe been lifting for, your natural strengths and abilities. You know, some people might just naturally be stronger in their upper body. Some people might naturally be stronger in their lower body. Some people might have practiced loads of that exercise over the years. Some people might have tried it none. Like it's all relevant. So the thing that I want you to take away when it comes to strength training, though, is that we do need to be training close to failure. And when I say failure, that means like we have 2 different types of failure. We have like muscular failure, or we have technical failure when it comes to our lifts. And if you think about a breakdown of like your muscles not being able to lift anymore, if you're someone who's new to training, you've probably not gone there, right? Because you've not maybe expressed true neuromuscular contraction for that exercise, right? You've not maybe tried to get out of the bottom of a squat and failed to get up. Like there might be a very low chance that you've done that. Technical might be like the breakdown of the actual lift, like you're doing a squat but your bum's coming up first, or you're wobbling all over the place and the lift's actually breaking down in itself. But when it comes to those 2 types of failures, what I'm saying is we don't need to go all the way there. Like a lot of the bodybuilding world, which has plenty of positives, by the way, which is like we've learned a lot from bodybuilding over the years around just the science of lifting. But one of the things that I do think we need to acknowledge is we don't need to go right to failure, but we do need to go within a range of it. And for a lot of my clients, when I first start working with them, and I actually mean this like totally respectfully, they don't know what that feels like just because they haven't got the experience yet. And I'll sometimes be a bit sneaky, and I'll put like an AMRAP set on the end of one of the sessions where it's like, that's just do as many as you can. So they might be telling me, oh my God, Jess, I could not do another rep. I've done 10 reps on that. I could not do another one more. And I'm like, okay, can you, on the next one, just keep going and show me what you've got. And they'll give me 20. So they did have it, but they just didn't think they did. And this is where there's like a really interesting link between like the psychology and the physiology of what we believe we're capable of. And one of my favorite bits about coaching women in training is like seeing them overcome these huge hurdles where they didn't think they could, but then they did it. And they're like, oh, I've just proved to myself something that I never thought I could do before. And that's amazing, because the more you do that, the more you step into this next level of yourself. You step in thinking you can do more. You have this self-belief, this self-confidence, and it just goes on and on and on. But we need to be making sure that when it comes to lifting weights, we need to be challenging ourselves appropriately. And the difficulty is you don't know what you don't know. If you've never done an exercise before, there's a hesitation to that. There's the technical element, which you might think, oh God, I'm not actually sure that I'm doing this right. So you're nervous, so you're not going to push the weight. I totally get it. But that's why we don't change everything all the time. And we focus on movement quality first. So I've said it before, but I'm a stickler for movement quality. I want you moving really, really well before I'm going to add loads of weight to that movement for you. I won't get a brand new client in the gym who I've never worked with before and put them on a barbell back squat, because that would be absolutely mental, because that is a heavy load for a brand new beginner. And even if they've told me they've done a squat before, I want to see what the squat looks like first. Is that squat the best variation of a squat for them? It might not be. Is their technique any good? Maybe not. Are they able to move that weight? Would they be suited in a better position? Can I give them some more tips to improve that beforehand? Because I think that's one of the big mistakes I see. A lot of people jump in the gun thinking that certain exercises, like are better or more advanced, and therefore they should be doing it. And some of them, oh, that looks like a beginner exercise, so I'm not going to do that anymore. It's like, get really, really bloody good at the basics, and you will be able to challenge yourself close to failure in strong positions and see better development in your strength and fitness as a whole, because you're doing it the right way, right? I always say to people as well, if I work with someone and I just rush them along through a program, if I just say like, yep, so you've done a couple of weeks on a dumbbell goblet squat, let's go on to a barbell back squat now, just because, right? But I'm selling you short by doing that, because maybe you needed more time to develop that squat movement pattern, to get lower, to feel it more, to control the tempo, to maybe nail the position a little bit better, to focus on your breathing and bracing a bit more. Loads of little tweaks that you might benefit from. And just because I've written it down and said, oh no, now's time for the next one, I would be robbing you of the experience, is something I always say to people. Like, I never want to rob you of the experience of getting stronger, because essentially that's my job. But also I want you to learn what you're capable of. And that comes down to good quality positioning, movement quality in the beginning, but also making sure that you know what effort feels like. But you're never going to know that if you're not in the right position to start with. So a little tool that you can take away from this today, which is get to know what effort feels like for you, is there's two different rep schemes you can use, effort levels you can use, RPE, which is rate of perceived exertion, or RIR, which is reps in reserve. They both mean the same thing. They're both a scale, but it's whichever kind of suits you. I really like RPE. So RPE is basically a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being the bottom end of the scale, which is you are doing nothing. Imagine me talking to you now is an RPE 1. I'm not really doing much effort. I'm just kind of sat down at home talking to you guys. Very, very minimal effort. An RPE 10 would be like, I cannot do any more effort, right? In the gym, I am failing that last rep. I am, like, my face is bright red. I feel like I'm about to explode. If I'm doing a 5K time trial as fast as I possibly can, that will probably be like an RPE 10. Or actually, maybe that's a 5K, because that's a little bit longer. That might not be an RPE 10, but it might feel like it. Maybe like it's a high because it's a sustained effort. So maybe say the average 5K time, I think, is 35 minutes for a female. So say, for example, that takes you 35 minutes. You probably are going to be operating at an 8 or 9 for the whole 35 minutes. But if I said to you, I wanted you to give me a 10 to 20 second sprint on the air bike in the gym, that would be an all-out max effort 10, right? Because it's short in duration, you can really give it your all, and you're going to have a recovery afterwards. Whereas actually sometimes when you have to think, I need to go really hard for a longer period of time, you don't, because your body needs to sustain. So you end up holding a little bit in the tank. Your body always holds a little bit back, which I always think is really interesting from a physiological point of view. Like, your body never fully expresses. Like, you hear all these crazy stories, don't you, about like mums who end up in a car accident and then their kid's stuck or something, and they end up lifting the car off the kid. It's like they express superhuman strength that they've never had before. And it's like, how is that possible? Well, it's because we always keep a little bit in reserve, which I find fascinating. Or people who like end up jumping really high off like the side of like a burning building, maybe not a burning building, but like a burning garage or something. And they're like, oh my God, how did I jump down from there? Like, I've never jumped that high before. And it's like, again, your body will always keep in a little bit in the tank for emergency situations. So when I talk about holding back a little bit, we all do tend to hold it back because it's a bit safer for our body. But our RPE is a really good way for you to start referencing in the gym. So if I said to you, you want to go close to failure, what number on RPE would you want to be operating at? It might be like that RPE 8, because you're basically saying you're operating at 80% of what you're capable of. That is close to failure. So you are getting there, but you're not quite. But over time, the skill is you learning, is that RPE 8 your actual RPE 8, or is it just what you think is RPE 8, but actually it's maybe your RPE 6 or 7. You just don't know that yet. So get used to challenging yourself in the gym and experiencing what true it feels like. And the same for RIR, reps in reserve. So for example, if I said to you, I want you to leave 2 reps in reserve, that is the equivalent of an RPE 8. 8 out of 10, I'm saying I've got a 9 and a 10 effort left. 2 reps in reserve is saying I've got 2 reps left. So if, for example, if you could do 10 reps on a dumbbell chest press, but you actually only go to 8, that is your 2 reps in reserve. Okay, so that makes perfect sense. The thing about this whole chat about challenge, this is why strength training is so... it's not just like a one size fits all, is because there's a lot in this, which is quality, right? It's not just about how hard you can go, because you might say to me, oh, Jess, I took away from the podcast this week that you said about RPE. So I went into the gym and I really challenged myself and did an RPE 8 on squats. But for example, if your movement quality still needs improving, you still might find it a bit of a challenge to move forward, because you need to slow down the exercise. You need to maybe create a bit of depth in the squat. Maybe it doesn't feel right for you now. Is it the best variation of a squat for you? Do we need to change it? Do I need to give you a different piece of equipment? Do I need to practice some breathing drills with you so that you're bracing in the right place? Do I need to get you to think about the movement differently? There's loads of different stuff that goes into it. So this is why it's not just black and white, but I do want you to take away from this is like movement quality matters above all else, first and foremost, but so does the level of effort that you are putting into the exercise. So make sure your movement quality for the exercise is down. And then as your confidence grows, build in some of that RPE chat, which is like, am I challenging myself hard enough here? And only you know. That's so subjective. So my clients probably think I'm a pain in the bum, because I'm always asking them that. Was that hard? How hard was that? What number was it? And they're like, oh God, I don't know what number it is. But I can't tell you that. I can hazard a guess, sometimes by someone's facial expression, sometimes by how quickly they get up out of the movement, or for example, if it slows down, or if the first rep looks like the last rep. There's loads of different things I'm looking for when I'm with somebody, or with my online clients when they send me a video. But at the same time, it's not just about like the speed and stuff of which you do it. Don't just think, oh my God, because I did that really fast, that was like a 10 out of 10 effort or 10 out of 10 RPE. It doesn't always come back to that. Sometimes there's other things at play. So take away the quality of the movement, but also, am I challenging myself enough? Am I going close to failure? Am I actually creating some adaptation in the gym by giving myself enough of a challenge? The next thing I want to talk to you about, which I think is so important, is even though women are doing the right thing, or they feel like they're doing the right thing in the gym, they often get tripped up by this age-old question. And sometimes it kind of frustrates me that it gets spoken about so much, because I almost feel like it's a part of the puzzle when it comes to your health and well-being, but it's not the most important thing. And I sometimes think by putting so much emphasis on this, it takes you off path and track for where you should be focusing your efforts. And the thing that I'm talking about is that awkward little square rectangle shape that sits on people's bathroom floors, which is the scales. Now, I'm not saying, and I think this is important, I'm not saying never weigh yourself, that I think that's just as useless advice as saying don't buy chocolate in your house if you can't help yourself. It doesn't help the problem, because when you go out and there's chocolate available, you will just have chocolate. Or for example, if you just say like, just totally get rid of the scales and never think about it, it might feel like a short-term fix, but it might not address the problem. I've had clients over the years, by the way, where we have spoke about it, where they've got into habits of weighing themselves every single day. And simply by moving the scales into the garage, it's helped them break that cycle. I'm not saying that that's not a bad thing. However, at the same time, we have done work on their body image, their relationship with weight, and why it maybe matters in retrospect to their goals, because that's the thing that actually holds, pun intended, holds the weight of this whole situation. So I will say though that I don't know whether it's maybe the echo chamber that I'm in, but I do hear this weight chat a little bit less than I previously used to. I don't know if it's like the type of clients that I work with who maybe aren't as focused on that as much anymore, but it still comes up in conversation. You know, sometimes I'll often work with people who will say, this is my goal, but I'm also thinking about my weight and how it fits into my picture of health, how I'm maybe concerned about it. So it still comes up as a topic, but it's not the focus like it maybe once was. One of the questions that, I don't know if you just heard my cat, Luna just shouted in the background. It was like right on cue, just for the gap. I don't know if you have thought about this before, but I want you to think about maybe your relationship with the number on the scales. And I want you to instead ask yourself this question. If no one ever knew what I weighed, would I care? If no one ever knew what I weighed, would I care? Like, imagine that number on the scales. You never have to tell anyone about it ever again. You don't have to mention it to your family, your friends, your GP, whatever it might be. Imagine we live in a world where that's not a factor. Would you care about it? And only you know what that is, right? But just like I mentioned with the underfueling thing earlier, I think it's important to ask, like, where does that come from? Why is that important factor? Where has that appeared in my life where it seems to be this thing? Was your family a bit weight obsessed? Did you have a relationship with the scales growing up that it made you think about it a lot more? Did you maybe grow up in a time like I did, which was, it was very like magazines showed people's weight loss on the front of them and all that type of stuff? Like, where have you picked up these signals and cues that weight is an important metric? And then just to throw some reality and some maybe awareness of, how many men's magazines have you ever seen mention weight? Interesting, isn't it? What's the benefit of women only ever focusing on weight? We don't really focus on anything else, and then that kind of takes us away from maybe some of the bigger issues at play in the world. Just a thought. But I think this is why I want to talk about it. If no one ever cared about the weight, what would it mean to you? But also, are you asking yourself these questions? Like, would you say you are healthy? Would you say that you are happy? Would you say that you are energized? Would you say that you are performing well? Would you say that your weight is having an impact on anything in your life right now? Whether it is your relationship with yourself or it is your performance. Remember, there might be some reasons why you want to lose weight, and I think it's important. I'm not saying that focusing on this is a good or a bad thing. I promise you I'm not. But I am saying make sure it's for the right reasons, because what ends up happening is if we focus on it and it's not for the right reason, we only end up getting to a certain point where we lose that number and we still don't feel great about ourselves. And I just hate that. I hate the thought of feeling like we're sold this promise that once we figure this thing out, we will be happy. And it's like saying, once the weather is a perfect condition, once the sun's out and there's not a single cloud in the sky, I will be happy. But we all know that that's never going to be permanent. Just like our weight can never be permanent. It's not fixed. We are women. Our weight fluctuates. We also go through different seasons of life, whether that is hormonal when we go through perimenopause and menopause, whether that is having children, whether that is we are going through a stressful period of life, whether that is we are experiencing grief and our weight goes up or our weight goes down, whether we end up on medication, which means our weight goes up or goes down. And until you become comfortable with the fact that it's not just about the weight, and instead you have this sort of inner peace with who you are and how you live your life, and then the weight is just, like I say, this piece of the puzzle when it comes to maybe your health and fitness, it's important to realize that. I've also had clients come to me before who've said, I am aware that this is a health marker and I've got surgery coming up soon and I need to be within a certain range. Makes perfect sense. I've also had clients before who need to be in a weight category for sport. Think about like mixed martial arts or weightlifting. You need to be in a certain weight category to do certain sports. So I'm not saying weight is a bad thing. I just think it's important that we understand there is a deeper layer to this than we maybe perhaps realize. And when it comes to the topic of today, which is like, I want us to focus on the stuff that really matters as women. The weight thing is, are we giving all the other stuff just as much of a limelight as we are weight? Because if not, why not? And what can we do to maybe help ourselves focus on stuff a little bit better. Okay, cool. And then the last one I want to talk about is this acknowledgement of change. I see this so frequently, and that is, as women, we can be quite poor at acknowledging how far we've come, how much progress we've made. When we've actually made some significant change, we are quite keen just to get to the next thing. And I hold my hand up wholeheartedly and can tell you I am in the same boat as you. And that's why reflection is so important. I think this is why having a coach is so important. I think it's why whatever works for you, whether it's journaling or having a chat with a friend or whatever it might be, is so important to be able to help you reflect on your progress. Because one thing I see when it comes to women in the health and fitness space is we always are looking towards the next thing, and we never feel like it's truly enough. And I think I spoke about this on the podcast last week when I spoke about ambition. But if you never feel like you're enough and trust your body, it always just feels like this never-ending cycle where you just don't ever feel truly happy with the progress that you're making. And we need to be ambitious in our goals. It's helpful to have things to look forward to and challenge ourselves. But don't forget, how far have you come? Have you been putting in the effort in your training recently? Have you been thinking about your nutrition? Have you been trying to be conscious about that habit that sometimes trips you up? It's all these things that I want you to celebrate more often. So here's what I want you to take away from today. None of this is about doing more or being harder on yourself. It's about finally getting it right. And I'm hoping that some of these conversations, at least maybe one of these topics, has resonated with you. And I actually want you to think, when it comes to training, it's about finding the thing that works for your body instead of against it, fueling it, challenging it, trusting what it can do. Hopefully some of these topics of conversation, there's something that's come from there where you think, that's me, I need to do that. I need to do that better. And that's what moving intentionally means. So if today landed and you want someone in your corner helping you how to do it, you know where I am, drop me a message. I'm more than happy to have a little bit of a chat. That's the whole point of this. I want to keep the conversation going. I want to, keep helping you guys as much as I can. But even if you never plan on working with me, that's okay. But just start eating enough. Just start training yourself with a reasonable level of challenge that you actually see some progress. Because I hate seeing, one of my biggest pet peeves is I hate seeing women in the gym giving up their time, giving up their energy, moving their diary around to then stop at get stuck at that hurdle, which is they're just not challenging themselves. And then they feel a bit disillusioned with, well, what's the point? Because I'm not seeing any progress. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, please give it a share on socials. I would love for you to tag me in your stories, tell me what you thought, give me your thoughts on this week's episode, give it a follow, share it with a friend, and I will see you all next week.